Awesome. So, welcome once again to our weekly health talk, which happens every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to commit to your health, to be proactive by learning information that could be of value to you or the people in your community, in your circle of influence, your families and friends. And so, as we share the information today, it's a little bit sort of a gloomy day today. The sun didn't come out. We're now in the winter months. But what we're speaking on is the something that I heard about, but not in depth. So I took some time to sort of deep dive into what this means. So we've heard of things like the winter blues, you're feeling the blahs, you feel like you have no energy, but it's actually a scientific description or term for what I'm going to share with you today. So it's called seasonal affective disorder. In acronym, the acronym is SAD, SAD. And so what I'm sharing with you is this information that I've gathered through credible sites, like Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, PubMed, and many others I've referred to where they've done studies on certain health conditions related directly and indirectly, signs and symptoms, and how we can improve our lives if you've ever experienced some of the symptoms I'm going to share with you. So again, my name is Cornell. My name is Kerry and Joseph-McLean. My husband Cornell McLean and I, we are not only life partners and close confidants, but we're business partners as well. We want to be proactive in our health. We want to be able to pour the knowledge we have gained into you by adding value. So we're not health practitioners. We don't profess to be, but what we are health enthusiasts. So over the last, let's say, almost 2 decades, we've sort of wanted to change the trajectory of our lives in a way that sort of helps us to understand how we can better improve our lives. So as I share this with you, just give me 1 second. I'm going to share my slide. Give me just a moment. And then I just want to confirm you're able to see what I'm seeing. All right. Oh, actually something here I just realized. I do apologize. Sometimes with my share button, it does not always cooperate with me. Here we go. All right. And if you can see my screen once I've shared it, I'd like you to put a one or sorry, actually a two in the chat. I'm going to share that with you right now. Sometimes we have technology which doesn't always it helps us, but sometimes it delays us as well. All right, now I can share my screen. There we go. Okay, so if you could put a two in the chat to let me know you can see the screen, I'd appreciate that. Okay. All right. So the seasonal affective disorders, as I mentioned before, what is that? We've heard of, like I mentioned, about the winter blues, the blahs or Monday blues, so to speak. But actually, this affects people in different seasons. It can be an all around, different seasons. It impacts you. It could be the winter, called sad feeling or seasonal affective disorder, even in the springtime, fall, or summer. So it depends on how it impacts you, especially with the biometric pressure and all the things that impact us because we're so connected to the earth. And so what this winter and holiday season, coming up to the Christmas holidays, sort of understanding how, I'm sorry about that, it's understanding how it impacts us in a way that we can sort of recognize some of the symptoms. So what is seasonal affective disorder? Well, many people go through short periods of that, feeling sad or unlike the usual self. You can't quite put a nail on it or pin on it. You sort of understand, okay, what's happening with me? So short bouts of this feeling. But sometimes these mood changes begin and when the season change. And of course, many people feel down or have the winter blues or blahs. And so the shorter cycles, if you're traveling, on vacation within that time frame, you may not realize that that's what's happening with you because you've gone to a different climate, different country where you get more exposed to the elements. So of course, you may not pick up on all of that. So there's um, a study done, a publication done, how the seasonal affective disorder impacts an individual. So we know that in the spring and summer, there's longer daylights, and in the winter is shorter, of course, especially it depends on where you live in the world. They may do the time change where it goes either ahead an hour or behind an hour as the season comes and goes. So the seasonal affective disorder is a form of mild to moderate depression. So that depends in the fall and descends in the fall or winter months or longer periods of time and fades in the spring. So one of the symptoms could be irritability. Others could include oversleeping. Or on the other spectrum, other side, flip coin of that description of oversleeping is not sleeping enough. So this sad or seasonal depression or seasonal affective disorder is a subtype of depression or bipolar disorder. So this occurs when it ends around the same time every year. Sometimes you don't realize it because you don't understand the cycle of how it works. So paying attention to these changes, the shift in your mood, what's happening with you, tracking it. You don't have to be as, diligent in tracking every single thing, but sort of writing down, certain key points that you experience throughout the seasons of the year. So seasonal depression typically occurs when the season changes, as I mentioned before, and most people is impacted as it gets darker, less light exposure to the sun. Some people it's year round. It depends on your body, what's impacting you, and how you're sort of being proactive with your health. So it begins for many people in the fall and continues through the winter months. And so I actually had a friend who she's from the islands, and she came here back in the 80s, and she experienced this for a long period of time, and she couldn't quite articulate what she was feeling. And she was saying she feel like she has the blues. But she didn't know what that meant. And so she had to take medication to try different types of things to help her, which didn't help. And then she moved back home at the time and she's found a big difference. Now, is it a permanent solution? No. She went away for a few months and came back, and then she experienced it again in the winter time. So it all depends on your genetics, of course, what's you're eating, how you're sleeping, a different sort of disruption in your daily health regime. So we know depression often happens with other conditions such as heart disease or cancer, or even stroke. So these things can happen because you're having an impact to your health. And so, of course, other things that might impact you, such as anxiety. So if you have a mood disorder, and then you have other underlying conditions, that's like a double whammy, so to speak. So for these reasons, early diagnosis and treatment is key to rediscover how to treat yourself, whether you choose to go through medication or natural approach or both to complement each other. And also there's other types of therapies that I'm going to share with you that I found through Credible Science, as I mentioned, you will see some footnotes, some source links that you can actually refer to. And if you find that if you've gone through this recording or if you're here live with us and you want to get the actual links, you feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to share that with you. As we mentioned, we're not health practitioners, we're health enthusiasts. So if you were to refer to your doctor, if you don't have a doctor, but you want to go to, a medical practitioner and ask them to refer to someone to help you in the way of a therapist, that also is a way to be able to empower yourself for a more as a resource to help you to overcome or to cope with some of the symptoms and conditions you're feeling. So the seasonal affective disorder, some of them can be really serious or mild, as I mentioned, and it depends on how the person feels, thinks, and behaves, and how they cope with things. So if you have noticed significant changes in your mood, keep in mind that people, especially women, who go through the seasons of life or the change of life, like perimenopause, they're going through puberty, they're pregnant, postpartum depression, you're going through all of that. Sometimes you go through like actual menopause, and you have these symptoms which are similar to the seasonal affective disorder, but they actually can have both. So these are things to be mindful of as well, because your hormone disrupted, your estrogen, your testosterone in men, all these things can have a contributing factor as to why your mood has significantly changed. So in most cases, the sad symptoms start in the late fall, as I mentioned, but some individuals, because they are maybe working indoors, or they don't have much exposure to the sun in the spring and the summer, they can still carry on these traces symptoms throughout the other season as well. And so other things can impact it, like anxiety and depression can actually compound that issue as well. So the seasonal affective disorder, there are certain signs. As I mentioned before, it may be less significant in the spring and summer, but nonetheless, it can go for more than 4 to 5 months of the year, or sometimes within the 4 to 5 months of the year, as during the winter months. So the signs and symptoms include things like I mentioned, depression, as well as certain types of patterns, which I'll share with you in just a moment. So I did mention to you the winter blues as well as the seasonal affective disorder. There's actually two separate things. So the winter blues, which we sort of mentioned as a casual statement, it doesn't need to be medically diagnosed. It's mentally and physically stable. That's what you feel, and in your body and in your mental state. You're still eating normally. You still have consistent routines. Just feel a little bit down or drained or low energy. You can still find joy in the simple things during the winter activities. And this on the other side of that coin is the feeling of sadness and that are encompassed and internalized. So more like you need to have medical treatment or medication if you choose to go to the pharmaceutical route, or natural remedies that can help you, as long as you refer to a naturopathic or a nutritionist, depending on what you're consuming, in case you're taking other medication like pharmaceuticals for something else, and you won't be able to take a nutraceutical. So you may find that you feel more antisocial, more withdrawn. You feel you don't need to socialize. You struggle to find joy in the simplest things. And of course, you may seek outside external stimulation to feel some sort of happiness for that moment. So the instability versus the stability, that's a major difference when it comes to your routine and how you function throughout your day, like eating, exercise. You may miss work, or sleep all day. Of course, the worst case scenarios, you may have, suicidal thoughts. So how does it overlap? What affects you? Well, the seasonal change, the shorter days, lack of sunlight. Experience low energy, lack of motivation for both winter blues and seasonal affective disorder. Of course, it may impact sleep quality, which is not regulated for both of them, so they have similar symptoms. And that's basically the difference between the two. The symptoms of depression, and of course, is seasonal depression, can include persistent sad and anxious or empty mood most of the day, nearly every day, or at least 2 weeks it'll for that length of time, feelings of hopelessness or pessimism, feelings of irritability, frustration, restlessness, feeling of guilt, worthlessness or helplessness, loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies. There's no joy and activities. So decreased energy, more fatigue, feeling slowed down, difficulty concentrating. You might say, okay, I have a brain fog. Why can't I remember things? Why am I not thinking clearly? You don't have a collective thought, right? So making decisions that can be dampened because your cognition is off. And of course, change in sleep, and everything is impacted. You don't sleep right, you don't think right, you don't move right. So changes in sleep, or even your appetite, or plan, weight change, like weight loss, sometimes weight gain if you're overeating, physical aches or pains, more frequent headaches, cramps, digestive problems. Remember, the gut and the brain, they communicate, right? So if your gastrointestinal is off, your tract is off, and your gut is not cooperating with the brain communication, it throws things off. And so this also was a study found through John Hopkins medicine. So the symptoms is like feeling weak and sluggish, problems with sleep, loss of interest. I mentioned before, fatigue and lack of energy. And one of the other things as well has been studied is reduced sex drive or lack of libido. So these symptoms are associated with seasonal affective disorder. There are other health-related conditions that can actually impact all of these 5 areas I touched upon. The most important thing is that it's tied to emotions, your emotional state, but also your physical state as well. And so everything is connected, as I mentioned. So how do you understand and realize it's not just the winter blues? Well, I mentioned before all of those related things, but you may want to self-diagnose yourself. I would say not to do that. If you find that you have more of the symptoms on the right side of that screen I showed you with the seasonal affective disorder symptoms versus just the winter blues, yeah, that's the best time to seek a medical advice as to expressing how you're feeling, why you're feeling that way. And then they can give you the best educated diagnosis. Of course, you're your best doctor because you'll be able to articulate more effectively because you've sort of kept track of what you're eating, how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, how you're moving, how you're thinking, and then you can relay that more effectively to your health practitioner. If you don't have a family doctor, of course, you can seek, a doctor through your neighborhood clinics, and they can actually assist you in that way to refer you to a specialist. So the seasonal affective disorder, one of the main things is that if you're not sleeping right, it impacts everything else. If you're not eating right, it impacts you as well. So if your brain's not getting the right nutrients, if your body's not getting the right nutrients, if your sleep is off, it's disrupted, you have broken cycles of sleep, then of course you may have a decreased feeling of wanting to experience life. Another thing as well is that if you're agitated or you're anxious, or you're finding more irritable, you're short on your patience, that's also because you aren't sleeping well. So again, it's a full circle. So either you're oversleeping or trouble sleeping, right? So for example, one of the best way I can say for the different types, different seasons. So summer depression, which is still seasonal affective disorder, you may have trouble sleeping. You may have poor appetite. You may have weight loss, agitation, anxiety. On the other side of that coin, like the winter depression, you have the oversleeping versus lack of sleep. You may have increase in wanting to have more carbs because you like that beer, you're sort of hibernating, collecting, right? Subconsciously you're doing that. So you sort of storing the food you need to sustain life, but really you're actually doing yourself a disservice by overeating the wrong types of food. Of course, and of course, weight gain happens because you're not moving as much, your metabolism slows down, less exposure to the sun versus the weight loss during the summertime, and which is tied to this depression I mentioned before. And of course, you're feeling more tired, more fatigued, and of course, low energy versus just simply feeling anxious or agitated. So you're not completely at rest. Even when you're sleeping, your body's not actually at rest. It's not feeling in its optimal best. So therefore, you're not going to be able to have the right rhythm when you're sleeping. Excuse me. So seasonal affective disorder, as we mentioned, is classed under depression or bipolar with seasonal features. So the subtype, as I mentioned, mostly happens in the winter time. People who have bipolar disorders are at higher risk of seasonal affective disorder. Since some people with bipolar disorder, episodes of mania may be linked to a specific season. So, for example, spring and summer can bring on symptoms of mania or a less intense form of mania, which is called hypomania. So, anxiety, agitation, irritability, all that is combined, which sort of impacts you more because you're dealing with both bipolar symptoms and seasonal affective disorder. So they may also experience depression during the fall more severely than those who just have seasonal affective disorder and the winter months as well. So for summer pattern seasonal affective disorder, I mentioned before that you may have trouble sleeping, poor appetite, but another thing is what is feeling restless, a feeling of restlessness. You may tend to have more violent or aggressive behavior. Some may be physically violent, some may be verbally violent, aggressive in the way they speak, how they burst out in the way of the emotions. Whereas the winter, they don't have, should not be confused with the holiday blues. So there's a big difference. So the depression associated with this is related to change in daylight hours, not the calendar. So stress is associated with the holidays or predictable seasonal changes in work or school. These are not the same as seasonal affective disorder. There's a difference between the two. So in some cases, people without medical conditions, the percentage of individuals are very low compared to those who have major depressive disorders or those who have bipolar disorder, although they're close in percentage. So people with bipolar disorder have a 25% higher chance of getting the seasonal depression versus people who don't have a medical condition. So Is it depression or is it seasonal affective disorder? That's the discussion we're having. So understanding the risk factors that play with certain people who are more susceptible to seasonal affective disorder is a combination of different factors. So, for example, where you live, the country you live in, age and gender, family history. Of course, if you have existing mental health conditions, of course, this is not to ostracize you. It's just to build a level of awareness for you to be aware that these can be contributing factors depending on your history. Of course, your personal history as well as your family, age, gender, and where you live. Most people who live in tropical countries may not experience this more until they migrate to a country that have the different seasons in the weather, and then they notice it is more they're more observant of that because of how their body have changed. As I mentioned to you, a friend of mine had this particular situation. They left a tropical country, lived here for almost 40 years, started experiencing that as she got older, going through the seasons of life, menopause, but also having this for many, many years without realizing this is actually SAD. So the mental health includes, as I mentioned, social isolation, cognitive impairment, and appetite change. And so the risk of the increase happens with people over a certain age. It's very rare if you're 20 and under, of course, but it can happen. So a diagnosis of SAD may be made after careful mental health exams and health history. Of course, you being proactive, expressing how you're feeling, not feeling ashamed, not thinking it's a stigma or being afraid of being judged, but knowing you can go to a person who can safely speak about what you're experiencing to be able to help you cope more effectively if you're going through this condition of SAD. Now, there's also a link between ADHD and seasonal affective disorder, SAD. So they're strongly linked because they also are more susceptible to SAD symptoms like low mood, fatigue, sleep problems, especially during the winter months. So, for example, the connection is often due to shared issues with your circadian rhythm throughout your day, your cycle. And I spoke about this in the last episode I spoke on neurodivergent, ADHD, autism, that if the circadian rhythm is off, it impacts your sleep pattern. When the shorter daylight happens, when the hours that you're exposed to, it disrupts you. So sort of exacerbates the ADHD symptoms, so compounding with these two things. So the circadian rhythm, both conditions associated with disturbed cycles or rhythm, your sleep cycles are delayed. And of course, it increases the inattention and cognitive difficulties. So your attention span, your cognition, have the brain fog, not be able to think more creatively, or you're not able to think more clearly, or put things, you may have many more distracted thoughts, which is part of the ADHD. It's actually, as I mentioned, compounded and exacerbated. So here's a chart. I shared this with you in the previous episode I did last week. Tuesday, for example, from the lunchtime, 12 o'clock to all the way till going into midnight into the early mornings. Let's say your early morning is at 4:30 in the morning. Your body temperature is the lowest. Going to your melatonin secretion at 7:30 in the morning. Bowel movement at 8:30, for example. This is what many studies have shown. Going fast forward now to, for example, you're at 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon. Your best coordination is at that time, fastest reaction time is at that time. So understanding how your pattern of the rhythm, how you go through the day, paying attention to that, tracking it, and understand, okay, this is when I feel at my optimal best. This is when I don't feel so good. This is when I have the lowest energy. This is when I have my BMs. Or if you don't have it every day, 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes once a day, this is when sometimes I have my deepest sleep. And then, of course, people who work in the evenings, this is totally flipping the circadian rhythm chart of reversing all of these things that are impacted as well, because you're forced to stay awake when your body's meant to sleep. So both conditions are associated with this disturbed circadian rhythm, delayed sleep cycles, of course. As we compound it with the seasons of seasonal change, this makes it even more hard to cope with. So people with sleep, sheer genetics, biology, increased prevalence of the ADHD, And showing that or expressing this is how you're feeling is, I mentioned, is to be more aware and to know how to effectively manage yourself, your symptoms to cope more effectively. One of the main things that are linked with this seasonal depression is not just the energy level, not just the concentration, but the overall feeling of your wellness sort of going down versus actually experiencing the sense of joy. So your well-being is off, your homeostasis stage is off, your sleep cycle is off, everything is off. And so there's no rhythm to your flow of your day, and you just feel scattered. You feel that the thoughts are not clear. Sometimes you forget, sometimes you remember, delayed reaction. So all these things impact not just you, but also your individual self, but also your household as well. So there's another thing as well, that if you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and you are experiencing these certain types of moods or symptoms I mentioned through the seasonal affective disorder, it can make it harder for your mental state. So people who have PTSD, anxiety, depression, it can aggravate PTSD. So you can have worsened emotional states. So some of the decisions you may be making in this state may not be the best outcome for your daily life, especially if you have more bouts of irritability. Of course, you feel anxious, and all these things compounded because you have been diagnosed with PTSD or have not been, but you experience some of these symptoms. You may feel overwhelmed as well because you have this feeling of feeling sad. You don't know why. So it adds an emotional weight, a state, and even helplessness. So these two things are, sort of fighting you in your body and your mental state as well. So there's two different extreme, the seasonal affective disorder. So it's called subsyndromal. This is the winter blues, mild, can be um, doesn't need medical intervention, but of course you're mindful of that and the things you need to do versus you clinically diagnose. So it's clinical grade depression or severe, which is requiring treatments, as I mentioned before, the different symptoms that you will have to look out for. So the reason I'm stating this is that people who have SAD, the winter pattern blues, their brain chemical serotonin is reduced. The serotonin is supposed to help to regulate your mood. If that is impacted, it impacts everything else. So that's one thing to be mindful of. Another thing too as well is you may not realize that you're vitamin D deficient. Many people, especially women of color, men of color, they are deficient in vitamin D without realizing it because you may do your blood work once a year, but not have that test done. Because that's here in Canada, there's additional cost for that. It's not free under the healthcare program we have here, which is public healthcare. But if you are a person who are non-Caucasian and you are, especially the winter months, you may be really sufficiently insufficient or deficiency in vitamin D. So having a test done or ramping up on the vitamin D, be mindful as well if you have thyroid issues to speak with your doctor as to how much vitamin D you can have. Most people, men will have about 3 to 4,000 or maybe 5,000 international units. Women can have, I take personally 4,000 international units, which is little pills. And this is the only vitamin that your body can produce. And if your body's not producing it, it impacts everything else. So we call vitamin D the sunshine pill. That's what it's called. Not the technical term or scientific term, but it's described as globally as sunshine pill. Vitamin D, not just in foods, but also um, in supplements as well, because you're exposed to well, you're not exposed to the right amount of daylight, especially if you are not Caucasian, then of course the melanin in your skin blocks the sun from sun damage, but also blocks you from getting the good dosage of vitamin D every day versus your counterpart Caucasians who are actually able to get more exposed because they don't have melanin in their skin. That's something else to be mindful of. There's studies that suggest that both forms of SAD relate to altered levels of melatonin. So this is a hormone that's important for maintaining normal sleep. Now, there are actual pills that are melatonin pills, but they're not as effective for long-term use. They will last maybe about 2 weeks and then your body gets accustomed to it, so it's not effective. So you need both serotonin and melatonin to help maintain the body daily rhythm, so which is tied to your seasonal night. Of course, you need to be able to eat food that helps you with your with the right amount of nutrients you need. But for example, if you're sleeping, try to have it in a dark space. Maybe wear some eyewear to cover your eyes while you're sleeping, or dark blinds to keep out the light, so your body is able to produce melatonin more effectively. Reduce the screen time before you go to bed a certain time frame so that you're able to sleep and not have disrupted patterns. Light therapy is also one thing that you can actually look into. Psychotherapy is another thing as well you can consider. If you are on antidepressant medication, that's something if you want to continue doing that, but there are side effects as well to any medication you take that are considered pharmaceutical under that umbrella. There's natural ways, which I'll share with you, you can actually consider that either to complement what you're taking or to replace it. Vitamin D I mentioned. Uh, for those who are like right now, we're in the winter months. This is actually a great way, light therapy and vitamin D. There's actual lights you can actually purchase that will help to emit the light therapy to help you at home. Or if there's a center you can go to that is easily affordable for you. But also think of this particular these treatments are sort of like your your coping skills, coping mechanism, or things you can do to react as the months and the seasons go. Most times you can be proactive with the things, like for example, vitamin D and medication if you have a major depressive disorder, and psychotherapy. But there are times when you can be proactive and something can be reactive. But again, as the season goes, you pay attention to your body. So the cause of this is unknown. So the seasonal affective disorder, but the therapies that we can consider the best tailor-made to you. No one therapy works for every person. It's like, no two people look alike unless you're twins, but of course there's some little variants. So serotonin, dopamine, and melatonin, especially in the winter months. So darkness, as I mentioned, increases the body's ability to produce melatonin, which help regulates the sleep. We actually have that in our bedroom. The blinds actually are very dark, keeps the sun out, the light out, and of course that helps us to rest more in a better rhythm of our sleep. So you don't get up more tired, you don't feel lethargic throughout the day. Of course, choosing the right time to help you to sleep more effectively. But here are some tips as to what you can do in increasing the or decreasing your ability to be impacted with SAD. So beating the symptoms, of course, you're being proactive, is taking care of yourself, your basic needs. To understand the self-care you're going to actually impart upon yourself will help you for your improving your well-being. So it shouldn't be a reason to shame yourself or to criticize yourself or to overly be judgmental of yourself. Just know this happens. Of course, you can actually overcome this so you can have a better sense of wholeness and overall well-being. So, for example, here's some self-care checks. There's actually medications you can take if you are going to the pharmaceutical side. Making sure you're taking your medication, even if it's natural medicine or pharmaceuticals. Brushing your teeth, showering, the routine, washing your hair if you do that daily. If it's weekly, then of course you do that depending on your background in the way of your ethnicity. Drinking enough water for the day, staying hydrated, planning your meals, maybe once a week, plan your meals for the week as to what you're going to eat and try to stay on track so that you're eating the healthiest with less processed food in your system. Move every day. If you're walking, stretching, strength training, whatever you do, try to journal what you do. At least if you can keep track of what you're doing, so you can go back and reassess yourself to know how to plan more effectively to minimize these exposure to SAD. Meditation for at least 5 minutes a day, even if it's just quietly, 5 minutes by yourself. Or there's something called walking meditation where you're walking in, you're sort of in a safe space, of course, and you can actually do more research on that. Checking in daily with the support team if it's a friend, family, a team, a community, just to make sure that you stay on track of being out of that mood, that rut you're feeling. Check your calendar for upcoming appointments to stay on track. Add upcoming events to your calendar so that you don't forget. I tend to do that. I've been doing that for several years now to make sure if it's in my calendar, I know I remember that, right? Especially if you have important appointments you have to attend to. Daily budget checks and make sure you're not overspending, signing with your online banking, things like that. So you sort of stay in the routine, being systematic with yourself so you don't lose yourself in the process. Do not use technology for 1 hour before bedtime. That's easier said than done, especially if we do mindless scrolling. And of course, go to bed on time. It's hard sometimes if you have a night shift versus a day shift, but try your best to get enough sleep, at least minimum 7 hours sleep. So caring for yourself during this type of seasonal affective disorder in the winter months, especially coming up to the holidays. Some other tips could be buy some indoor plants that can help to ease the symptoms of depression. So we are actually linked to nature, so something like that can actually help you with the symptoms of depression and anxiety because you're caring for a plant, you're caring for, you know, something with nature. And of course, that being your house, it's a different feeling. It's just having only material things around you. So it helps you to nurture more. And of course, I mentioned the light therapy, stretching, strength training, and of course, getting up every day with gratitude. If you get up every day with gratitude and not thinking of the things that you can't control, be intentional with the with yourself. Be intentional in seeking things that give you joy. Even if it's being grateful that you've gotten up out of bed, you or your family, or you have a really good friend if you don't have families around you. To know that you have something to look forward to for that day. You can plan your day the night before, and as you're executing what you have to execute, you have that feeling of, that you've actually done something for that day. So you experience joy. Try to laugh more. Find something that will help to relieve your stress. These are things you can consider. Little videos without having to be consumed with the mindless scrolling, but try to get that mood up so that you're able to express, to change, the shift, change the trajectory of your day. So you're experiencing more joy than actually downtime. I did mention the actual natural lights, exercising, eating a balanced diet, and of course the light therapy. There are actually some lamps you can actually get for inside in your home, in your bedroom, for at least 20, 30 minutes a day to alleviate the symptoms, which can help to improve the mood. You can actually check online to see how you can acquire those. They're not that expensive. So also there's a link between SAD and chronic pain. So it can be challenging. So if you have a chronic pain, which brings on more anxiety, which brings on more insomnia, or brings on more hopelessness. And it's especially in the winter months when it's really cold, seeps through your bones, your body. You may have that, but then compound that with SAD, right? So you can actually try to improve these symptoms with the right strategies to improve physical and mental well-being by creating a routine for yourself. Pay attention to what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what adds more stress to your body, what doesn't add more stress. Eating right, thinking right, sleeping right, moving right, pooping right, all these things will help you to be able to conquer these or combat these things that you're feeling. So being more proactive can help the winter months seem more manageable. So also for the ADHD, as I mentioned before, um, if you have ADHD as well as SAD, the medication you may be taking for ADHD may have some side effects. But then again, you can combat that if you have to take the medication, especially with your attention disorder or you're going through the hypersensitivity. There's certain foods that you can't eat depending on the consistency and texture. You're able to now manage how you manage your winter months versus your summer months if you're going through ADHD is something that will help you to be more adept at overcoming this. And so having that going into overdrive, you may not be able to think more clearly, your concentration may be off. But if you can plan ahead, right, we're already in the winter months, you can plan strategies to help you. The things that you want to consider, you may not come clear to you at the moment because you're in that moment of brain fog, or you may have that listless moments. So things like therapy I mentioned, creating a routine exercising, support community, mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, maybe journaling something to help you to stay in the right state of mind of gratitude, and meditation if you can. Sometimes with meditation, it's hard to sit still if you have ADHD, to have not be distracted. But once you're able to do that and to master it within, keep on practicing and doing that, you find you feel more relaxed. Breathing exercises are really good, especially if you're going into meditation. And diet and nutrition, and of course, practicing the proper sleep hygiene by making sure you take away distractions, quiet space, dark space, all of that to help you to have you go back into the circadian rhythm. So if you know, as we all talk about, what you eat is who you become, what you think is who you are. So it's like your central nervous system, so to speak, is either being held hostage because you're not giving it the right things, your body not giving it the right things, versus if you eat the right things, it can actually improve your mood and overall well-being. So there's a study done that the Mediterranean diet, which includes more fruits, vegetables, fish, whole grains, healthy fats, for example, like olive oil, nuts, and seeds, they've actually shown to improve and treat moderate to severe depression. And this is a study done between the age of 18 and 25, but this older studies done with people who are older than 25 that actually has helped with. So you may want to change or incorporate things along with the Mediterranean diet. You don't have to be in that region, but you can actually do online to see what is the Mediterranean diet, right? So the study that shows that people who were already diagnosed with major depressive disorder, once they start consuming this, giving themselves the right nutrients for their mind, body, they're able to have a better mental state. And the symptoms that they're experiencing will be, significantly reduced. And this is the website I found that information on. But of course, think of it this way. I mentioned before that your gut is connected, related, or linked to your brain. So the input output, so to speak, the gut brain axis, we call it is a two-way communication highway. And so if you think of the gut and the brain, so you're not getting the right nutrients. So if you find that you may have an issue with your gut, something called leaky gut syndrome. You may not have been diagnosed with that. Or you find that your stomach is not quite, your function of your gut, your intestine is not working quite right and able to poop right. You're not able to have your stomach is bloated, you have different issues, more chronic pain, you may have tears in the line of your stomach that you may have been diagnosed with many other things. Means that your brain is not getting the right nutrients. So what does it mean? It means that if you're eating right, to reverse all of that, be able to heal the gut, you're able to have more promising treatment for depression because these studies that were done between the link between the gut and the brain have shown significant improvement before people who have depression, anxiety, when the gut-brain connection is communicating more effectively. The gut-brain link, for example, think of it as that your brain can be inflamed, the joints can be inflamed, the gut can be inflamed, the body can be inflamed. So the gut-brain link is a chronic low-grade inflammation in the gut. So that means if there's inflammation in the gut, it's linked to depression and anxiety. So the potential to reverse all of that is making sure the gut immune system connection and the mental well-being capacity is getting the right nutrients to be able to combat that. There's something called the microbiome. So there's a study done to suggest that there's an imbalance in the gut bacteria. It can disrupt the neurotransmitter production. So if the gut is imbalanced because it has the wrong type of bacteria, the brain, it doesn't compute properly. It's basically misfiring, so to speak. So this contributes to mood disorders like depression and many other things. So think of it this way, like circle of life, right? Back in school, you see which bone is connected to what bone, knee bone is connected to and so as you think of it this way, if the gut is connected to your brain, which impacts your mood, if you eat something that doesn't have the right nutrients or sufficient nutrients, and by the choices you make, you're starving your body of the right nutrients. So you're not getting the right vitamins, omegas, anti-inflammatory foods. You're eating more foods that are more inflamed. And of course, it impacts your nervous system, your immune system, your neurotransmitter, brings on more inflammation, and it impacts your metabolic state. It impacts your inflammation, which increases versus, being more normalized. So, but if you were to treat your body by eating the right things, prebiotics, probiotics, omegas, all the minerals, vitamins that you need, and reducing the amount of synthetic foods you're eating or unprocessed food, then you're able to say, okay, I'm treating my gut right. That means I'm treating my brain right. So the food we eat affect our mental health, and our mental health status affects what and how we will eat. So if you're feeling depressed or stressed or, sad, you may have poor choices in what you eat. That's why it's important to sort of plan your meals ahead, right? So if you continue doing it every single day, it will change. There will be a shift, right? Consuming more omega-3s, antioxidants, vitamins, especially B vitamins, more complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates like white bread, white rice. Those things are not good for you. So complex carbohydrates keeps you fuller. It actually helps to fuel the brain, giving it the glucose it needs for the source of energy. Of course, everything as I mentioned before will help to reduce oxidative stress, inflammation, improving proper brain function, cognition, and reducing depression and anxiety. So keep in mind that the foods we eat today don't have all the nutrients we need because the soils are really depleted. But at least you're eating things that will help you on the right track or move you in the right direction. So the choice of boosting your mental health, because this is a choice, through better nutrition is eating a balanced diet, avoiding processed food, increasing, omega-3s, limiting sugar and caffeine, staying hydrated, incorporating fermented foods, including brain-boosting supplements, practicing mindful eating. Of course, if that means meal prepping, plan and prepare your meals, be sure what you're eating, what goes in comes out, of course, and what in between, how it's processed, and of course, if worst case scenario, you find that these aren't helping, and you have other severe thoughts like suicidal tendencies, seek professional guidance to help you to go on the right track. But I did mention before that you have the food which provides the source for the nutrients your body needs in what you consume every day. But most of the foods on the planet are heavily depleted because of the soil being depleted of nutrients. So you may not get the right amount of dosage you need for that daily supplement, recommended amount. So think of superfoods as a way to add to the nutrients and supplements you need to give you well-rounded well-being. So we know that we need nutrients to be able to give our body the right type of what it needs in order to be able to move and behave more effectively in a good way. So superfoods could be anything from what you eat, what you drink. So for example, my go-to for superfoods are three, actually four. But what I'm sharing with you right now, it's three medicinal and food supplements. So they're under the same class, two different classes of type of superfoods. So the medicinal and Anadema lucidum, which is also called reishi. That's one of my favorites for the last almost 15 years. Cordyceps is another one, and so is lion's mane. They all have many benefits. The main thing is that they support the brain, it supports the immune system, it fights infectious diseases, and there's over 3,000 plus case studies just for the reishi alone. Imagine the others as well. But there are other things as well that I go to as well. I think the spirulina, some people may go to ginseng, some people may go to aloe vera, but these are my on the world the health table for superfoods. Reishi is considered number one thus far. So as we speak about these three, I'm going to focus on these three. They're medicinal mushrooms. They're higher in the nutraceutical properties. So that means a higher potency of nutrients as well as low in calories and fat. So they are rich in sources of nutrients. They actually help with anti-inflammatory, have many properties of that, as well as help in many other areas. So think of it this way. You're eating food to get the antioxidants, which reduces the oxidative stress. This is what I found out so far through studies. But if you're not getting enough antioxidants, your body can't fight free radicals. If you're eating the right amount, it helps your body become more in a homeostasis state. So you may like avocados, but you may get seven in the way of dosage you may have to have seven avocados to get the right amount of antioxidants versus a single dose of the Ganoderma or reishi, you get 150 in the way of antioxidants in the dosage. But for example, I love green tea. I may just get 54 in the way of the measurement for the international units in green tea versus a single dosage of antioxidants from the Ganoderma is 150 versus 54. So you're actually getting more nutrient dense in the way of what you need for your body versus just everyday foods that you're eating. So supplementing your food with superfood is a win-win depending on the choice you make. So I mentioned before brain fog. That's something also that many people have. Doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. You may be highly stressed, you may be depressed, you may just be overstudying, you may be not getting enough sleep or changes of life, change in season, you may have a health condition. Brain fog is a real thing, all right? So this is what I'm sharing with you is a holistic approach that you can consider to add or supplement into your daily life that can help you to have a well-rounded in the way of your healthier lifestyle. So these are studies I found through a credible site. These are documented evidence of studies by researchers, doctors, people in that field, peer-to-peer studies that shows the benefits of adding or consuming reishi mushroom. So for example, if we know there's medication for depression, major depressive disorder, but this actually works the same. It actually eliminate, removes the depression-like behavior. So if you're thinking of something defeating these symptoms, it actually reverses all of that. You continually consume it. And it's considered a food supplement, so you can't overdose, and there's no known side effects. So it defeats stress, defeats major depressive disorder, it reduces anti-inflammatory, especially in the central nervous system. As I mentioned before, whatever is holding your central nervous system hostage holds you. So if you're stressed, you have PTSD, you have ADHD, ADD, you have seasonal affective disorder, it's holding your central nervous system hostage, then there's no way that you can actually have a well-rounded well-being lifestyle. So another thing as well I want to share with you is not only is it great for the major, defeating these things in the way of depression or anxiety, it has so much polysaccharides, which we get in regular foods, is that the ability to provide your body with the right amount of nutrients, you can start seeing and feeling, of course, everyone's body is different. So as you consume it, you pay attention to your body. So some may have slower response time because they don't have as much toxic buildup in their body, or they're not as nutrient deficient. And some people who are starving for nutrition, they may have a faster, a sort of like experience in a way of a positive way. So it helps with in the condition of major depression. Also, if you have severe mood altering, and especially the low energy or difficulty concentrating, actually helps with that as well. It actually helps as a sedative. So if you find that you are highly stressed, not able to sleep, helps with that as well, and also works as a antidepressant. It has properties of both. I mentioned before, antioxidants very important, especially for removing oxidative stress from the body, also eliminating free radicals from your body. This actually can be consumed in addition to if you're taking, for example, medication for depression, it can be used as a complementary or alternative. So it can work together with the medication you're taking because it does not negatively interact with medication because it's under the class of food supplement and not just medicinal supplement. It improves cognition impairments and alleviates the neuronal damage. So as you're consuming this and you're checking with your doctor to see how your status, you have your psychiatrist or your mental health practitioner, or even speaking with your family doctor, and you're explaining all of these and they're running tests, they'll be able to tell, through their the excuse me, are they able to tell as you need to continue your medication or continue taking both? Keep in mind that most practical health practitioners, they don't study natural medicine. They study pharmaceutical. So it's best if you can speak to a naturopathic doctor as well, so that you can actually speak about your journey that you are on with your mental health. I spoke about the Ganoderma, also mycelium is another thing as well you want to consider. Mycelium works together in synergy with the Ganoderma. I'm showing you a slide here on the Ganoderma, but there's something called mycelium. So the mycelium is one part of the Ganoderma. So the Ganoderma grows into three stages, so it's harvested at three stages of growth. The mycelium, we call it the baby mushroom, or the baby mycelium, or the baby Ganoderma. And mycelium is the root part of the Ganoderma. So that is called baby mushroom, baby Ganoderma. The fruiting body, as you see in the picture, is called the Ganoderma itself, lucidum. And of course, there's something else that's the third part, which is harvested. It is the spores, it is the seeds. These are the most powerful part of the actual mushroom that goes onto logs, plum logs, or as nature intended, so it can continue to regenerate. And so the mycelium, which is the rooting part of the body of the Ganoderma, is known to help with individuals who are experiencing anxiety and depression. It's very powerful to provide by the right nourishments for your nerves and the calming your mind. And it improves depressive-like behavior as well. So imagine you're taking mycelium plus Ganoderma, the fruiting body, for a well-rounded way of supplementing your health. So the Ganoderma itself, as we know, not only supporting the immune system, helps with a better mood, it helps to fight stress, it alleviates anxiety-like behavior, improve antioxidant capacity. It not only doing that, as if you're taking medication, pharmaceuticals for a mood disorder, ADD, ADHD, all those things, they do have side effects. So what the actual Ganoderma does, it actually protects your organs, especially for those who have anxiety like insomnia, which you can have in certain cases like this. The cordyceps, as I mentioned in the beginning of the three mushrooms that I actually love for my family and myself, is also works synergistically with the Ganoderma or by itself. So individuals, for example, who are experiencing anxiety, it works as an antidepressant effect. It helps with individuals who have depression, chronic mild stress. So it works well with or without it. But also helps to improve your sleep, especially with people who have symptoms of depression. But also the cordyceps is considered it as an active ingredient for antidepressant because it gives that type of effect on the body. The cordyceps itself helps also regulate the proteins in your body that's related to oxidative stress. So think of oxidative stress as if you have a tomato and it's ripe and full and healthy. And over time, if you leave it to exposure to the elements, it sort of downgrades to being rotten. You're not able to eat it. So that's how oxidative stress, it impacts the cells. And so it's from healthy to unhealthy cells. So the free radicals that are attached to the susceptible cells is what we call the oxidative stress. So it can bring on the trigger of the inflammatory responses, which is the negative impact on your body. So imagine you're taking something to remove those symptoms from your body and to help you with your overall well-being. So for the cordyceps itself, it also helps, I mentioned before, as one of the symptoms for SAD is a loss of interest, especially if your libido, lack of energy, or your sex drive has been reduced. It actually boosts your stamina. It helps with your libido, not just your memory, but also your support as you're supporting your immune system. It enhances your healthy energy. It enhances the energy, your stamina, and your libido. So there's actually what I'm going to share with you just a minute or two is how you can actually consume both. So the potential for the cordyceps also is really good for as a prebiotic to reduce some of the issues you may have with your gut. So let's say, for example, you have a gut issue, leaky gut, or you have a gastrointestinal issue. You can actually consume this so you can heal your gut. And this is something you can have in addition to the reishi as well. So if you think of a strategy for improving your intestinal health, your brain health, your gut health, this would be a great way to test it, to see how your stress level is impacted, how your appetite is impacted, how your digestion is impacted, your pain sensation, and your overall health, especially your sleep. And so if you think of your cognitive thinking, we focus on memory, thinking, reasoning, understanding, judgment, and behavior. So what if that is impacted because you have SAD or symptoms of that or other symptoms related that compounds and exacerbate, like, for example, bipolar or even ADHD and ADD. So the other part of that is that to have a brain fog. So brain fog is a very loose term. So foggy thinking, anxiousness, blue mood, moody, can't figure things out, not clearing your thoughts. So this actual herb called lion's mane helps to compound actually eliminate to eliminate this. So you're consuming, it's actually a product I'm going to share with you that can have all three included. On your own, you can actually consume it itself, but I love it because it comes in different form that I'm able to recognize. And since I'm a habitual beverage drinker in the way of how I grew up. This is a win-win for me, maybe for you, or may not be for you. So lion's mane itself is one of the three I mentioned as a go-to with my favorite superfoods. It actually helps with the cognition. I've actually found that for myself after consuming just 1 cup of what I'm going to share with you, my thoughts are clearer. And I find that I can think clearer. I have more mental clarity, more mental energy. I'm not feeling fatigued. And I find that I'm able to be more creative in my flow just by consuming an infused beverage with this superfood. So the mood and the gut-brain axis, they are related. The medicinal mushroom I mentioned to you, it significantly improves, in how you're behaving in the way of you're expressing yourself. You find that you're able to have better recognition of the things that's just around you, your behavior, and of course, you find that your recognition memory is improving as well as your spatial working memory. So all of these are connected. So you find there's a big difference when you're consuming something that gives you the right nutrients. Not only that, is that if you're thinking of consuming any of these three, there's actually a superfood, a product infused with these three or by themselves. So this brand that which we represent is called Organo. So we've discovered wellness through this platform, amazing platform for over 14 plus years, and just witnessing the power of this Ganoderma, this reishi, we were able to link arms with this company and to share this brand which has a purpose. So we help people create better lives and healthier and richer lives, knowing that we can impact people worldwide, even within our circle of friends as well. So as we speak about the passport to holistic wellness, it's thinking of Ganoderma infused into everyday things we can consume. Because on its own, it's very bitter. To have it every single day is not something you would habitually have unless you have you have a health scare in the way of like a terminal illness. So most of us are habitual, so we tend to move to what we like, coffee, teas, hot cocoa. So imagine the genius of infusing these beverages into everyday consumable items that we love, we've grown up with, but with a twist. So think of making one small choice with a lasting impact. So practicing mindfulness, which I mentioned before, mindfulness and positivity through wellness by consuming your favorite beverage by making that simple change. So think of it this way as if you like coffee, you may be told you have to give up coffee because of the stimulation. You may like teas. You may have to give it up too, or you'll drink it as because it's heavily caffeinated. You may have some negative impact because you're having these beverages. But what if you're consuming this delivery mechanism of coffee, tea, and hot cocoa and more, where you're not tasting any of the medicinal mushroom, but you're enjoying the flavor, the gourmet taste of this coffee, tea, hot cocoa. Now, if you like a more therapeutic dosage, it comes in capsule forms. So it not only can you enjoy it if you just drink water or warm water, you can actually enjoy the benefit of the capsules or both, which I do as well. Just my go-to. You also have it in the form of toothpaste, the Ganoderm itself. We have skincare, which I actually use. I love it for the last 5 years. It does not have Ganoderm in it, but it does have Manuka honey and many other natural ingredients that helps the skin. Because what you put in your skin goes into your organs, goes into your bloodstream and stays there, right? So if it's synthetic, it's not good for you. So in consuming something that helps your body detox of all the things that are negatively impacting you, but you're getting, the overall well-being, feeling of consuming these products and you're seeing that, you pay attention to your body. This for me is a win-win. Now I know it's done for me and my family and for individuals we're connected with. What it does for you, only you can tell until you consume it, because the body does not lie, it tells you exactly how it feels. So these are the three I mentioned before: the Ganoderma, the Cordyceps, and the lion's mane. There are infusions of products. We are naturally grown. We have over 32 certifications. To the right, you can see how others grow it. Artificial is still considered, natural. Sorry, it's still considered certified organic, but not naturally grown. And so, of course, you see the difference in color versus ours. Less nutrients to the one on the right. All the nutrients that Mother Nature intended that goes into your body. That's what it needs to do. Think of it this way: if you have a sick body, you cannot produce a sick child, a healthy child. So if you have unhealthy body, whatever you are, your offspring emits in the way of their health is a part of you, because you cannot produce a healthy child. So same thing as if you have Ganoderma, if you're growing this and you are able to consume it, it's not going to give you all the nutrients you need because it's not grown as nature intended. So individuals may go towards the one on the right, but they're not getting the right amount of nutrients they need. This is how the capsule form comes in. They're in vegetable casing. We do have decertification through Health Canada and many other, including EcoCert. It is halal and kosher as well, certified, and many other certification. But think about it this way: you're taking your supplements, like you're taking your vitamin D's, your prebiotics, probiotics. But if you're taking any of the Ganoderma, if you're taking supplements in the way of vitamin D's and all of these things, like for example magnesium and all of the type of supplements that are on the market that are recommended for your well-being, when you take Ganoderma, it actually helps your body to absorb the nutrients of these supplements you're taking more effectively, because think of it as a medicinal and food supplement. So you're getting the nutrients you need from that source, plus your food source you're consuming. So thinking of unlocking the full potential through any of the means that I'm sharing with you, from the immune system to cognition to providing overall well-being in the way of mind, body, and spirit. These are things I would ask you to consider: is what is it you want to do to be more proactive for 2026? What is it you want to do in the way of your health and well-being for your family? And if it's the right choice, right fit for you, so at least give yourself 30 to 90 days, at least effectively, consistently pay attention to your body and see how it helps you in the way of your well-being. And of course, we know we want to enjoy life and to be healthy for as long as we can. So whether you choose the coffee, the teas, or if you're a hot cocoa kind of girl like myself, you're getting the best of the best, world class, in the way of our certification, in the way of taste. And so I share this with you. Think of it for the season. If you want to give a gift of health to someone, you can actually have it sent not only within your circle of friends here, but you can actually extend it across the border. There's free shipping for North America as well. Right now, very limited time frame. If you want to send outside of North America, free shipping is not a part of that, but you can actually gift the gift of health to someone in another country. So I've shared with you how we discovered wellness with Organo, and I hope you enjoy this presentation and add value to you. I want to be able to say that, as you go through this season of life, as you go through the season of life, in this winter season, be safe, practice wellness, especially as we can be stressed in the winter months more so than the others. But knowing that you're here, you're practicing health and wellness, is showing that you are showing up for yourself. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Before I do that, I'm actually going to stop the recording here and ask if you have any questions.